Okay, so my name is Julie Merriman and I live in Dublin. I'm a visual artist and my work is primarily based in drawing, but due to the materials that I use, uh, I've also started using mimeograph printing in my work as well. Yeah, drawing is definitely my primary medium, and it's obsolete technologies that I'm using. The materials I use in my work, so I use like carbon paper, typewriter film, and I've also recently then started using mimeograph wax stencils, and they're all obsolete office copy materials, and they're the materials that I use mostly to make the drawings. My proposal was to make a series of postcards, mimeographs, specifically mimeograph postcards for the project. I'm making work addressing each of the 5 ports. So I'm making two different postcards for each port, and I'm going to make them in editions of 50. So that'll be 100 postcards per port, and that'll be 500 postcards in total. I think one of the reasons postcards are so popular is because they've got a really broad thematic appeal. And so I've decided that each port I'm going to look at a different theme, if you like, for the postcard. So with Dublin Port, I was looking at trade and the movement of goods. I've done postcards for Holyhead and Rosslare. So for Holyhead, I travelled across to Holyhead and I spent some time there, but I made a big drawing of the train station in Holyhead. But I had photographs of that. And so for the Holyhead postcards, I'd taken one of those photographs and I made it the stencil on the Riso. And it's quite a dramatic, the lighting was really good in this photograph. It's quite dramatic. So I've made the postcard for Holyhead then from that photograph. That's one of the postcards. And I made another postcard for Holyhead. I'm also very interested in engineering and in naval engineering. And I made another postcard that was a line drawing based on the blueprints of naval architecture. So they're the two postcards I've made for Holyhead. And then the other port that I was familiar with is Rosslare. So Rosslare and Rosslare Port, they're places I'm very familiar with. I spent all my childhood summers in Rosslare, and I also still visit there every year. So for Rosslare, I've addressed Rosslare, the townland, like I said, different themes. So for this, I've addressed the townland and not just the port. I've drawn on a memory here. And so for the Rosslare postcards, I used the memory of a house that's called the White House, and it's situated on Rosslare Strand Road beside the Iona Hotel. So both the house and the hotel have been empty and neglected for many years. And every time I visit, and I'd be there at least once a year, they deteriorate a little bit more. And I made some drawings of that house a few years ago. And now for me, this house, it's kind of the quintessential representation of a summer house. And it kind of incorporates the same kind of transitory feelings I get every time I read or I reread Virginia Woolf's book To the Lighthouse. Just something about it, that house always just brings it to mind. And so then last year in October, I read that White House had been sold. And then in January, the Iona Hotel also this year was sold. So this little small section of Rosslare Strand is going to be completely irreconcilably changed in the near future. And I suppose they're just a nod to the ephemeral nature of place, really. But so that's, again, a completely different theme to what I have for a Dublin Port. So yeah, so the postcards will be standard size. They're 148 millimeters by 105. I'm used to making very large scale drawings, so this is the smallest size I've ever worked to. But it's been great doing that. Mostly today, postcards are photographic images. Prior to photography, they would have been lithography and woodcut would have been used to make them. And then in the 19th century, printing technology advanced and publishers experimented with special edition sets of postcards produced by artists during that time. And so I'm kind of looking at that notion, an edition of 10 different type of postcards for addressing each of the ports. For the Carlisle Pier residency, so I worked on that project between 2006 and 2010. So the Carlisle Pier was built in 1859, and it was also known as the Mailboat Pier. And it was the departure point for like hundreds of thousands of immigrants from Ireland. You know, having lived in Dunleary, I knew the history of the building, and as I said, I travelled back and forth there myself over to Holyhead, and I was familiar with the journey. Initially, I was interested in the site because it was to be redeveloped. However, that didn't happen. It never got redeveloped. In fact, in 2009, the building was knocked down. Even the really nice Victorian, there was a beautiful old Victorian shed building there where the trains used to go into, but that was knocked down as well. And it's basically used as a car park now, which is horribly disappointing, really. It really is. Initially, I made drawings that were just of the outside of the building itself, the Carlisle Pier. But as the project progressed, I became more interested in the site itself, not anything that would be redeveloped there, but in the actual Carlisle Pier site itself. And I was interested in the history of the building and really the people who left from there, and also the boats that had depart from there, like the Leinster, and what had happened to that boat. And I developed my work basically along those lines. It was a long project, and I made a lot of work about it. I wanted to make work to kind of commemorate the people who had left from there. So I'd also made a lot of images around the notion of the Leinster boat that had left from there and it had sunk. I made images of sinking ships, but not. I wasn't interested in it as a wreck. I was just interested in the notion of that terrible moment when a ship actually sinks.